Lori, I want to just dive right into your work as a graphic designer. Tell us a little bit about your company.
I started 303 Creative about a decade ago. I create custom, unique expression and artwork through my business. I love what I do. I get to work with people from all walks of life. And I want to design and create for weddings, but I can't do that because Colorado is censoring and compelling my speech and forcing me to design custom speech, custom artwork that goes against my core beliefs.
So let's talk about that because obviously you have a successful business. This is an area you want to get into, designing, for weddings. You could have sort of said, I'm going to stay silent here. I'm not going to take any action, but you chose a different route. You chose to stand up and take action on this. What was it that compelled you to make that choice?
What put me in a position of making decisions 6 years ago was the fact that the state of Colorado is compelling my speech, silencing my speech, and chilling my speech. And it has so for the last 6 years. Through my business, I work with everyone. I have clients from all different walks of life, including those who identify as LGBT. And what the state is saying is that it can force artists to create custom artwork that goes against the core of who they are, and that's not okay. So the right to create and speak consistently protects not only me, but it protects the LGBT web designer who shouldn't be forced to create custom artwork celebrating messages that oppose same-sex marriage.
Yeah, I remember a case out of actually it might have been the Melissa Klein case, if I'm not mistaken, but there was a printer out in New Jersey, a lesbian-owned print shop, making the same argument and actually defending the Christian bakers, saying, look, we don't want to be compelled to make these products at our print shop either for a church, let's say, or for, whatever. So it was kind of interesting. As we look at this, Kelly, from a legal perspective, because critics will say, oh, well, this person is rejecting the LGBT community. They're doing this based on sexual orientation. And, obviously, Lori, as you were saying, there's a little bit of a difference here. Can you help us understand that difference, Kelly?
Absolutely. Lori serves everyone, regardless of who they are. She has clients that identify as LGBT. She loves serving everyone. There's just certain messages that she can't custom create through her art, through her websites, regardless of who asks for those. What's important to note here is that Colorado also agrees with this. They stipulated to the fact that Lori does serve everyone, regardless of sexual orientation, and yet they still claim the right to come after and censor her speech. And that is something that really should frighten all of us, regardless of what our beliefs are about marriage or any other topic. In the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decision, the court said that what Colorado was doing was trying to silence certain beliefs like Lori's that it disagreed with. That is frightening, that the government would claim the power to try to eliminate an entire belief. Free speech is for everyone, and we're hopeful the Supreme Court will affirm that in its decision in this case.
And the oral arguments in that case are Monday, December 5th. So this is coming up. And this is a case a lot of people are looking at for a lot of reasons, right? We've spent a lot of time culturally and in the news looking at the bakers, mainly. I mean, those have been sort of the people at the forefront of this. But, this is sort of opening up to other business owners like yourself. And obviously, Lori, for you, you've been fighting this battle now for years, but people may just be sort of hearing about you now, understanding this because it has reached the Supreme Court. What is your hope at the end of this, Lori? What do you want to see happen?
I'm hopeful that the highest court in the nation will step up to protect everyone's right to choose the words that they speak, that they create. Everyone should be free to create and design consistently with their convictions, whether those are similar to mine on the topic of marriage or whether they're different, because a win for me in this case is truly a win for each and every American.
If somebody didn't, let's say an atheist designer didn't want to make a website for a church, right? The question is, should that person have that right? I think from a lot of people's perspectives, they would say, sure, if the atheist doesn't want to be compelled to make a website for a Christian church, they shouldn't have to do that. So this is a really interesting, issue that, again, extends beyond just what we're talking about here with marriage. But Kelly, can you help us understand, because at the baseline of this entire thing, this battle is Colorado law. Can you help people understand what the law says and maybe how it's being applied? Because I think there might be some differences there. Maybe the application isn't quite what's on paper.
Absolutely. Well, Colorado is misusing and misapplying its public accommodation law to compel Lori's speech. And the government can't do that. In many states, public accommodation laws are in effect. They're coexisting in harmony with the First Amendment. But instead, in Colorado, they are deciding that they can come in and censor someone's speech, compel them to say something that they don't believe. And you mentioned a minute ago about the atheists. You're right. The government can't force anyone, regardless of what their beliefs or their values or their ideology might be. The Supreme Court and our Constitution have been very, very clear that you cannot compel a speaker to either speak or to stay silent. And so Colorado is absolutely abusing its power in how it's applying this law to Lori, who serves everyone regardless of who they are. She simply can't create every message that's requested of her, which is true for most artists.
Well, we've seen this with Jack Phillips, right? That case has been really interesting. And obviously there have been multiple cases now surrounding him as a baker. But I remember there was one case where, and I may have some of the details wrong here, I believe there was another baker who was approached to make Bible-shaped wedding cakes, right? That had Leviticus and another verse from another book of the Bible on them. And those verses had to do with homosexuality, but that baker declined the cake, and that was okay under state law. And there was some conversation about the fact, well, you're conveying a message in that case, right? The wedding cake might not, and you could of course have an argument about that. The wedding cake might not say a message on it, but these Bible cakes did. And so it was okay for her to deny that. Kelly, are you familiar with that case?
Yes, and protecting free speech ensures equality under the law when you protect the free speech of everyone. And Colorado discriminated against whose speech it was going to allow based on whether the government liked the particular artist's speech. And you're right, there were 3 other cake artists in that case, and they said, oh, well, we think your speech, which you'd want to decline that message, that's permissible. But the message that Jack didn't want to promote or celebrate, the government didn't like that. And they cannot pick and choose who wins and loses. The First Amendment applies to all of us, and the government is there to protect and respect that, not to exclude speech it doesn't like from the public square, or to try to silence or coerce someone to speak something that they don't believe.
Now, Lori, you're in the midst of this. Obviously, this is heading to the highest court in the land, as we talked about on Monday, December 5th. Those are the oral arguments. But what has this been like for you? You know, it's one thing to go out and do this, but there's always a reaction, right? There are people who are going to say a lot of things, both pro and con. What has it been like to navigate that part of this puzzle?
Well, it certainly has been a roller coaster that's been going on for over 6 years now. I don't think a lot of people recognize the amount of time that's gone in this journey. And of course, it's been met with quite a bit of backlash. I've lost business. My clients have been harassed. I've received many death threats, threats of physical harm. I've had items show up at my home. I have a security system on my home. My home address was put on social media. It has certainly been a roller coaster. But I think what's important to note is that there are others out there who hold different views on marriage, who support this stand for free speech, because they recognize that this free speech is for everyone. It goes beyond your ideas of marriage, your opinions on marriage, and that everyone should be free to work and live consistently with their deeply held convictions.
Death threats. Wow. I mean, that's a common theme, unfortunately, in these circumstances, people saying all sorts of things, which is almost unimaginable that a case like this would spark that. Was there ever a moment where you wanted to throw in the towel on this because of that?
I believe that the right to speak freely is worthy of protecting. And while I was hopeful that the lowest court would solve this and allow me to create consistent with my faith, I know that the right to speak freely is worthy of protecting, not just for me, for the LGBT web designer who shouldn't be forced to communicate messages that violate their beliefs, for the next generation who may very well grow up and want to pursue art. Everyone should have the right to work consistently with their beliefs without the government punishing them.
So, Kelly, last question for you here. One of the things that's been intriguing in recent days is watching the media coverage surrounding Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and calls for her to recuse herself based on her faith and allegiances to an organization, a faith-based organization. What's your reaction to those calls to recuse?
It's despicable, and it's unfortunate that we're at a time in our society where we're doing this to justices. Each of the justices have their own personal faith, and to do that is religious discrimination. It's imposing a religious test on our justices, and to suggest that because of her faith background or any of the justices' faith background in some way prevents them from serving on the highest court in the land. Look, the justices, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear in Lori's case that free speech needs to be protected, that the government cannot compel speech. And we're hopeful that all 9 justices will take a really hard look at this case and recognize that at stake here is the free speech rights that belong to each of us as Americans. Whether we agree with Lori or not, they should uphold the right to speak freely.
Well, absolutely. And I so appreciate you both coming on to talk about this. It is a case a lot of people are going to be looking at to see what is going to happen. Thank you both very much.